Picture this. The sun comes up. Totally, almost disrespectfully normal. Traffic is humming along, people are sipping their tea, mindlessly scrolling on their phones, just rushing off to work like they always do. But then, for one impossible moment, you realize the truth that instantly changes absolutely everything. This is your very last day on Earth. Not your last week, not some vague someday way down the line. Today. Today is it, before everything just fades to silence. Imagine that realization just dropping into your stomach like a rock. Your heart is beating normally, sure, but your mind? It is reeling. Suddenly, the room you're sitting in, that chipped old coffee cup on your table, the way the light is hitting the window right now, it all feels incredibly sacred. Because if this really was your last day, your biggest question wouldn't be about what happens after you die. It would instantly become about what you choose to do with the few precious hours you have left before it happens.
24 hours. It is an agonizingly short window of time. Now, at first, let's be honest, you would probably panic, right? We all love to imagine ourselves as these brave, philosophical people, but when the end becomes a guaranteed certainty, fear is absolutely going to rush in first. But eventually, that initial shock burns out, and what takes its place is this razor-sharp, profound clarity.
Part 1. When the illusion collapses.
The very second you know the clock is ticking, all the daily illusions we live under just completely fall apart. All those modern, absurd worries, they collapse. Unread emails, some small insult from a coworker, the like she didn't get on a post, they instantly look totally ridiculous. Instead, your brain stops sorting by what's important, and it starts sorting by what actually has meaning. Deeply sensory memories come rushing back with this shocking force, The smell of rain on dry dirt, the sound of your mother calling your name, your very first heartbreak. Life completely stops being a schedule, and it just becomes a mirror. So what do you actually do first? Well, everyone faces the ending through the shape of their own life. A person who is full of love might just spend the entire day holding hands with their family. A regretful person? They might rush out to apologize to someone they completely abandoned. The fearful might just keep moving, literally pacing, just to avoid stopping to actually feel it. While the angry might just rage against the sky. But here's the thing, no matter the reaction, the clock just keeps moving for all of them. Seriously, think about how different your morning coffee would taste right now. Think about how a simple cracked wall or just a dog sleeping in the shade would look impossibly beautiful simply because you're seeing it through the lens of goodbye. Mortality teaches us this really strange lesson. We really only realize how precious the ordinary is when we know it's impossible to repeat.
Part 2. A world facing the end.
Now let's zoom out on this thought experiment for a second. What if you aren't alone in knowing? What if the whole world finds out that everyone only has one final day left? The streets would become completely unrecognizable in minutes. Governments would scramble helplessly, and people would immediately start doing the most deeply human things possible to find meaning. You'd have people rushing to airports for these impossible last-minute flights just to hold someone they love one last time. Others would sit quietly beside sick relatives in hospitals. Many would just go straight to the ocean, honestly, just to feel the vast size of their own soul. And some would simply go home and lock their doors. I love this thought, because as that initial wave of global chaos exhausts itself, this brutal clarity would emerge. All those words people have been saving for tomorrow would absolutely have to come out right now. Phrases like I love you, I am sorry, and forgive me would travel across the world like fire through dry grass. For one brief day, humanity would shed its pretenses entirely.
Part 3. The weight of unfinished life. As the day wears on, the emotional weight really grows, bringing us face to face with something far more haunting. See, our true fear isn't actually just death itself. We fear incompletion. We fear that our story ended before the final chapter could even be written. It's the unbearable weight of that job you hated but never escaped, the dream you totally abandoned, or the apology you just never made. The last day forces us to see that almost all of us are living a quiet, unfinished life. We're living too distracted and way too small.
Because there is no longer any reason to perform for the world, love stops being about big words and grand gestures. On the last day, presence becomes a language all its own. A shared silence, a really long hug, the tears you don't even bother to hide anymore. We simply do not want to disappear without being seen. And just being there for someone becomes the ultimate witness to their existence.
But what about the guilt, right? The damage we've caused. You obviously can't rewrite a whole life in 24 hours. So if regret arrives like a dark storm, you can only choose the next right thing to finish honestly. Step 1, just stop lying. Step 2, call the person you wronged and finally release the truth. And step 3, which might be the hardest, Forgive yourself. Not because you necessarily deserve the comfort, but because carrying that punishment right into the end isn't going to save anything.
Part 4. Watching the clock run out.
Inevitably, time itself kind of becomes the villain. Because even on your last day, you still have to exist inside the countdown. And the psychological weight of every single minute is just staggering. The morning feels agonizingly long as the shock sets in. Then the afternoon suddenly feels way too short. By evening, the reality feels impossible to process. And the night feels like standing at the edge of a cliff with your eyes wide open, just waiting for the inevitable drop.
We are left with the ultimate human contradiction. You would desperately wish for time to slow down so you could squeeze the life out of every remaining second while simultaneously wishing it would speed up just so you wouldn't have to endure the painful waiting. We never want the moment to end, and yet we cannot bear the agonizing wait for it.
So what would you say to the person you love most at that final sunset? We cry at endings not just because we're sad, but because endings totally strip away our fundamental assumption of another tomorrow. When you know there is absolutely no other chance, no other hug, no other dinner, you realize that endings make love truly visible.
Part 5. The gift of the present.
Which brings us to the ultimate, resonant lesson of this entire thought experiment. If you knew you were dying today, you'd look around and see how many people are trapped under the spell of ordinary worries, money, deadlines, petty drama. The greatest truth is that time was never infinite to begin with. The spell is broken. Every single day is already a borrowed gift. You don't get to keep it, you only get to use it well.
So imagine that final hour approaching. The sky darkens, the light shifts. The roaring cities have fallen away to a complete whisper. You can hear the distant wind, maybe some footsteps. The body becomes painfully alert because the knowledge of the end is close enough to physically feel. Every single breath matters. Every second feels like burning gold.
But it doesn't have to be ugly. If you've lived fully, without the masks and the empty performances, that last day could literally be the purest day of your life. Because what actually survives the end? Only truth, only gratitude, only love. It's a profound recognition of the absolute miracle that you even had the chance to exist at all, to feel the sun, and to learn to love.
In the end, the things that matter aren't your possessions, your status, or the applause you chased. It's the faces, the voices, and the unfinished stories. It's the raw moments that mattered. When the final darkness comes, what you carry with you isn't fear, but the beautiful shape of a life that was real.
So, I leave you with this final question. What will you choose to do before the end arrives? What are you delaying? Take this explainer and share it with someone who always says, "I'll do it tomorrow." Because sometimes the most powerful question isn't what happens after the end, but how fully you choose to live right now, today.